Welcome to Hearn Fine Art Presents. I'm Garbo Hearn, and today we are looking at the works of Louise Mandumbwa, a Botswanian artist who's created an exhibition of mixed media works on paper and panel entitled With Feeling.
What lens is that?
This is what is this? This is a 24 to 70 millimeter.
Okay.
2.8, a Sigma. Are you interested in photography at all?
I have dabbled a little bit, but I only really used prime lenses, like a 50 millimeter, and the kit lens that it came with, and I think I have one slightly longer focal length.
And what does that allow you to do, the photography? How does that come into your artwork?
Well, since I'm interested in people, it really allows me to document everyday people on the go, so I try to keep it on me. Everywhere I go, I take the bus pretty often, and when I do, I'll have it with me and I'll take photographs of just, I think, the different people that I interact with. So photography is something I enjoyed slightly, and it becomes a part of my storytelling as reference for some of my artworks. I'm actually a graphic design major, so in terms of painting or fine art, I'm entirely self-taught, but graphic design is my field of study in university, and I do a lot of digital illustrations and portraiture digitally using Photoshop and Illustrator, and so that's like another crossover. So initially when I started painting, I didn't have enough time because all of my painting work is non-academic, and so to supplement that, I started doing illustrations and exercises of abstraction, which were, you know, any 20 to 30 minutes I could grab anywhere on campus. I'd have my graphics tablet and my laptop, and I'd start drawing. Because I can't have, you know, a canvas and all my paints with me anywhere I go, but I usually have my laptop on me, so that was my solution to feeling like I wasn't creating enough constantly.
Why is it important to feel that you're in constant creative mode?
Well, I think it's more so pace than anything else. It becomes very easy to be complacent and only do something occasionally if you're very casual about the creative process. For me personally, I kind of joke about having had my existential crisis turning 20 because I felt like I don't know how much time I will have left on this earth. And in the time that I've been given, should I die tomorrow, I don't think my work communicates everything I want it to yet. And so for me, there's this constant feeling like I need to create what it is that I want to leave behind and not assume that I'll get to do that in another decade or that I'll have another decade to tell those stories. So I think authenticity in my work has become very important to me in the last several years, just wanting to create honest work that isn't too concerned with being aesthetically pleasing or beautiful, and focus on real stories, because I have today and I have my hands now, and I don't know if that will be the case several years down the line. So that for me is part of the urge to constantly create. I don't know how much time I have left on this earth, and I want to leave a certain caliber of work, if that's the right way to communicate that.
You said that this has been your thought process for the past several years.
Uh-huh.
How many years is several?
I think the catalyst of that would be, I had a good friend of mine that passed away when I was 12. We grew up together, and she passed away of cancer. It was a tumor that went untreated and really undetected for some time until it was too late. And I think losing someone that young kept the idea of mortality, or introduced that to me pretty young. And so I never wanted to assume that I'd get the privilege to grow old, because that really is a privilege. You don't know how much time you have. And so I think I've really been trying to more seriously create fine art work in the last 3 or 4 years, and that would be when that part of my thought process kind of started influencing my creative process. For me, it's very important to communicate stories of ordinary people who don't always have the platform to be seen. And as I've grown older, that's, I think, something that's been impressed on my heart even more. So that's been the last several years of my life.
Well, Thomas, you've got pre-diabetes. But with more exercise and a change in diet, it can be reversed.
I've tried exercising. It just makes me hungry for bacon.
I love bacon, too. And who really likes to exercise?
Not me.
Me neither.
Nobody. So we're good?
What? Oh, you still have prediabetes. Big time.
Of all the things you've done with your bike, donating it to Goodwill may be the most incredible of all. Your donations help fund job placement and training for people in your community, which means your stuff can be more powerful than you think. Goodwill. Donate stuff, create jobs.
Your daughter just had her first breakup. Do you A, put yourself in her shoes, B, console her,
Don't worry, sweetie. This is gonna happen a lot.
or C, find her a new boyfriend?
Nice, single boys. That was weird.
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
This exhibition in particular is, I guess, a play on the adage of it takes a village to raise a child. If it does, this would be the figurative and literal village that raised me, in terms of people I actually know or cultural roles that are represented that I recognized in my life. So I really wanted to try and do justice to those stories. And there's a model named Ebony Davis that said something that was really beautiful. She said, art, fine art in particular, it allows you to humanize the systematically dehumanized by giving them a voice. And so this is my small contribution to that. It's not about me, but more about the community I'm from and my experiences through that community.
And what are the people in your community that is this exhibition? What are these people saying, and to whom?
I think when you take people out of the context of what you think they're like, and you stop and you really look at them, you see that they are just as complex and sentient as you are. And it's that depth that I wanted to be communicated. If you really look into the eyes of a person, regardless of where they are from, something in you recognizes that they are just as human as you are, that they are just as complex and their situation might not be as simple or as complicated as you imagine because of where they are from. It is who they are. And there's a phrase in Zulu, which is Ubuntu, which is this African humanist ideology that translates to, I am because we are. And it's this idea that as technologically advanced as we are, with all the medical breakthroughs we've had in the several decades that we've been on this planet, that really if you lose the ability to see the humanity in another person, then you have lost everything. That what separates us from other animals is really the ability to show empathy and compassion. And those are not things you can show to yourself. They require another person to be there and for you to understand them, and that is what makes us human. And so when you have people who have had their experiences compressed to a single emotion and they've lost that dynamism and that depth, that's what I wanted all of my portraits to communicate. If you really stop and look at all of them, I want there to be some type of connection, because I think when creating them, that is the process that I go through. I only feel like I'm almost done or I'm getting closer to having them completed when I feel like I can feel it, I can see it. This is a person. This is a person, and it is not a single emotion. I think only the children in my portraits, I didn't notice until they were all up, smile, and that's because happiness is a single emotion. When someone doesn't have a specific emotion on their face, you really look and understand the depth. If you're having a serious conversation with someone, the smiles fade away and there's sincere emotion there. And so not all of the characters or the individuals that I've painted are smiling, but that doesn't mean that there isn't happiness. It's just not a single emotion that's being portrayed. So there is depth in all people. We're all sentient and we're all human. And I think if you can for a split second see someone and have questions about them as a person without thinking about the context or thinking you know something about them because of where they are from, then I have achieved what I'm setting out to do with my work. Within the South, and really within almost any community in Africa, there's a plethora of skin colors. So there are people that are very light in complexion, that have freckles, that have light-colored eyes, that have light-colored hair. And then there are people that have much richer and deeper skin tones. And I think going back to some of the criticisms of my teachers, there was a hesitance in me to create something that I felt was too dark for me to correct if I made a mistake. And so in part for me, there was a personal challenge to really find the colors in something that was dark and really look into different skin tones and bring out the colors and vibrance in them. And I kind of joke about how you're not supposed to leave artworks in the sun, but in the sunlight, I feel like you can really see every layer of the skin tones in the people that I draw, because it is not just one color. It's chocolate, but there's variations of color that exist beneath that, and I think that really is incredibly beautiful to me. So I've loved getting to create a plethora of skin tones, and one of the pieces here is actually an albino man, a man with albinism, which is that black and white piece over there. And for me, when I was thinking of people that maybe don't get to be represented in some way, albinism isn't something that's recognized or celebrated. Not just in the arts, but in terms of people, when you think about African people. And I was thinking, if I'm really truly trying to look at visibility, let me look at it in every way that I've seen and experienced it in my life, and not be pretentious in any way about that. So there wasn't necessarily a conscious effort on my part to create people that had deeper and richer skin tones, but because those are the people that have populated my reality, those are the people that are reflected in the work.
I see you mobbing over her. Let's go. Let's mob. Let's crawl. Let's crawl. Let's crawl. Hey, yo, we mobbing. Come on, girl. Let's crawl. Hey, yo, let's crawl. Hey, yo, let's crawl. Hey, let's crawl. Hey, yo, let's crawl.
Every year, 40% of all food in the U.S. never gets eaten.
40%. That's almost half the food we produce.
Food waste is a serious problem. It impacts all of us.
And it's expensive. Your family is throwing $1,500 a year in the trash.
We're working hard to put food waste on the chopping block.
And you can do the same at home.
Learn how to cook it, store it, and share it.
Just don't waste it.
Go to savethefood.com.
Don't ignore the subtext. It's on us to intervene in sexual assault. Because we can. Take the pledge at itsonus.org.
Bye-bye.
Hi. Hoping for a crisp breeze to help keep you alert. Oh, he took a sip of water too. That'll probably help. You were probably gonna turn down the radio too, so you could focus, right?
Probably okay isn't okay.
Right?
If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend.
I think the water line is what really drove it home. I blew on him.
Your works seem to have a three-dimensional quality. It's almost as if they are protruding from the canvas. Do you see that? Do you do that intentionally, or is it just something that comes out in your process?
I think it comes out in the process. I've heard that comment before, and I find it interesting. that so many people have made that comment, because it's not something I consciously saw or realized in the process of creating. But what I do love is light. I love the way light plays on skin tones and what it brings out in them. And so in all the photographs that I either referenced or took myself, it was very important for me to have light in a specific way in them. And so whether that means part of the face being more illuminated than the other, or a reflection in the eyes, it just, sunlight does something incredibly beautiful in person and in artwork to a person's skin, a person of color skin in particular. It just brings something out of them, an inner light almost. And so that could possibly be a contributor to them feeling like they are maybe larger than life in some way.
Talk me through the process.
Okay, so the process is, it always begins with the person more so than an idea I already have. Sometimes I come across a person that is just incredibly striking to me. You know, some people would just have that about them, and it's not necessarily being beautiful. There's something more, and the more you interact with this person, the more you're drawn to them. And so in the photographs I've taken myself, I try to bring that out. So James Handy, there's a portrait over there in the corner, James Handy, and really the two next to him are of individuals that I met in person, and I was struck by them, and I asked to take their photograph, and after some convincing, they allowed me to. But there's something there, I think, in some people that have more of an openness and a vulnerability to them than most. And it is really that aspect that is striking to me, that I feel like, you know, it makes me take a second look, and I'll photograph that and try and capture that. But for me also, I try to reference the work of other photographers that are maybe in places that I cannot access personally. And so there are two pieces in this exhibition that I managed to get permission from photographers who shoot locally in the region of Soweto in South Africa. They're a trio of photographers called I See a Different You, and their idea, their premise in all their work is similarly to shine a light on perspectives and individuals in this community that is sometimes seen as not a positive place to come out of. And for me as a young woman, to go into that space with a camera, that would not be safe for me to physically go there. You know, I might not be able to interact with and really genuinely create connections with people there. And so it is either photographs I've taken myself or referencing photographers who very similarly are motivated by telling stories, genuine stories that don't get to see the light of day, and doing so honestly. And so in both cases, it's really something that you see, that you're drawn to, that almost haunts you, that you keep coming back to, that I keep coming back to, that makes me want to capture and immortalize it in some way. And then my process is really, it's evolved some. I initially worked with watercolor on watercolor paper, and I tried to do the same with acrylic, and the paper buckled terribly. And so I got wooden board, and I started working on wood. And I think the beauty of wood is every piece is a learning curve. The wood responds differently to the paint every time. The grain on the wood is different every time. The person is different every time. The story is different every time. And so I really appreciated and loved that. And I feel like things just really came to life when I started working on wood. My process would be to find something that haunts me and then not sleep until it's done. So every free moment I have becomes dedicated to this piece and really working to bring it to life. If I'm not working on it, I'm thinking about working on it or what else I could bring to it. But that would really be it. It's something within me that really yearns to see this piece done right. And there's nothing technical outside of that. I just keep working at it until it is done. Each of these has a special place in my heart, but this individual, his name is Muchindu. The piece is titled Of the Sun. And he was part of a trilogy. These two, plus a third that isn't in this exhibition, were a trilogy that were built together on the same type of wood, but on the same premise as well. So Muchindu is of the Tonga tribe, which is in Zambia, and he's my best friend's older brother. So he's been present in my life since I was yay high. And I think he always exuded a strength not aloofness, but a strength. And part of that, I suppose, would definitely be from being my best friend's older brother, but also being a man in a society that at times puts a lot of pressure on young men. And one of the things I wanted to communicate in the trilogy was the grace with which people carry themselves in unfortunate circumstances or when dealing with life, really. And so Muchindu is someone that I knew, and I managed to take his photograph when I went home over the summer, and the sun was setting, and his eyes looked brown, and I asked him to turn to the side, and there was something about the way the light played on him that gave him a presence that I loved. It just encapsulated him as I'd known him my whole life. It doesn't capture his playfulness, but there's, I think, an openness to him. And that would be him as he is. And so out of everything, I think I've been surprised by the responses to this one, maybe because he's someone I know better than most of the people in this room. But I definitely think of the son of Muchindu. It captures a contemporary African as he is, not trying to be anything else, someone very much like you. That just is who he is. And then this piece, Rendele, was actually captured by a Belgian photographer. So almost every reference photograph that I use, and there aren't many, I try to make sure are taken by African photographers. Benoit Ferron is a Belgian photographer who moved to the Rift Valley and went through native and nomadic tribes in West Africa and spent a lot of time studying them and capturing them. And I think unlike a lot of other photographers, I never felt like there was a sensationalism in how he portrayed people living a very different life from what he was used to living. I felt like there was a dignity with which he captured the images and a sensitivity as well. And so in this piece, I just really loved her eyes. I loved that more than anything else. She has this beautiful cultural garb on, which I'm sure weighs far too much because this isn't the whole of it. It's just this very intricate beaded headpiece and shawl. But it was really her face that I was drawn to. It was this woman that was in a cultural context not too different from mine, who just had incredible grace in how she carried herself. And I think being aware of the cultural circumstances that may exist, it was really beautiful to me. Not in an aesthetic sense, but in a pure and genuine and resilient sense. So, these two.
Hey, you.
Yeah, you. Getting that college education, what are you gonna do? Graduate and take some office job? Be like everybody else? Or will you dare do something different? Like, be a teacher. You could be my teacher. You got the skills.
The smarts?
Yes, you. You could be the teacher I never forget.
That'd be cool.
Does that corporate job even have recess? What are you gonna make of yourself?
What are you gonna make of me?
Did you know kids who play outdoors have healthier lungs?
Totally.
I did. Did you know that boys that play with dolls make better husbands?
My son has lots of dolls. But did you know terry cloth diapers breathe better?
I did.
It's totally true.
Oh, yeah.
Did you know that strollers have the right of way on a sidewalk?
Yes. Yep, I did. Did you guys
Did you know that kids who eat breakfast have higher GPAs?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. That's actually what I was going to say.
Did you know babies should never touch silver? It's really bad for them.
I knew that.
Did you guys know that statistically friendly kids have more friends?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's obvious.
Did you know most people think they're using the right car seat for their kid, but they're not?
Parents who really know it all know for sure that their child is in the right seat at the right age and size. Visit safercar.gov/the right seat to make sure your child is protected.
I'm putting that on my blog.
I just put it in mine.
You've messed up your son's haircut. Do you try to fix it? Work with what you've got? Or show solidarity?
Thank you, babe. You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
You talk about honesty and storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
Who are you when you are being the most honest about you, and what story would you tell if you were a painting?
That is a great question. I've never actually created a self-portrait of my own accord. I've had one as an assignment. Who am I when I am most honest? I believe I'd say I'm listening. I have this belief that there are stories so much more intricate and in some ways important than my own for me to listen and learn from. I think I'm constantly trying to listen and understand the culture that I've been born into as a young woman in Southern Africa. Both of my parents are Zambians. They're both teachers, and I was born and raised in a Southern African country called Botswana. And so growing up in a place that was different of my citizenship, because I am a Zambian citizen, I always got to have that comparison of culture, and I got to see how dynamic and beautiful both were. And I think from a very young age, because I'd had that comparison that some people who are born and raised in their own country and never get to move and see what the rest of the world, the rest of the continent, other countries near them are like, culturally or otherwise, I feel like I am an observer at heart. And being able to make those comparisons, for me, I became very curious very young about just how beautiful and dynamic the different ethnic and cultural groups across the continent were. And then I think more so in other developing parts of the world. There's something very honest, I think, and I know I've used that word a lot, about the developing world, because it is striving towards technological advancement, but still holding on to a lot of its culture. And that's something that developed nations, I think, lose in some way, but crave because they go back to those places. They go back to visit places that still have a lot of cultural heritage. And I got to grow up in a world where there were gatekeepers, if I can put it that way, people that strove to educate us about the culture we came from. And those were always oral stories. And so getting to listen, I get to put into a visual form some of the stories that I've been told and experienced myself. In a world that is still building itself, being a visual artist, I feel, gives you an opportunity to chip into a narrative that is still being written. So in my most honest state, I am listening and potentially eating fries.
Thank you for watching Hearn Fine Art Presents. If you'd like more information on Louise Mandumbwa or any other Hearn Fine Art artists, please contact Garbo Hearn at 501-372-6822 or visit our website, hearnfineart.com. And if you're in the greater Little Rock area, please visit the gallery at 1001 Wright Avenue at the corner of Chester and Wright in the historic Dunbar community.